Well, I got to take a look at Late Night with the Devil. Well, I didn't just get to take a look at it. I watched the whole film. And I just right off the bat, I did enjoy it. I liked it. I think it's pretty good. There's some flaws here and there. But the approach of it, of course, I'm drawn to because, as I've said in previous reviews, I'm quite the sucker for found footage films. And most of them are bad, but every now and then, some really good ones. One of the main problems that a lot of them have is you have to establish the credibility for the camera to keep rolling. And quite a few of them fail in that, among other flaws they may or may not have. But another approach to this sort of thing, and you could bring in other films that wouldn't be considered of the found footage variety, but there is an argument for it, and that's just the faux documentary, the mockumentary, or whatever they call it. Either way, it's a documentary about a certain event that didn't really happen. It's still a work of fiction, but it's through the structure of documentary. And such was the case here with Late Night with the Devil, which is about a 70s late night talk show of this host, Jack Delroy, who was a competitor for Johnny Carson in The Tonight Show. Well, of course, this didn't really happen, but if it did, it would be Jack Delroy. So it was based out of New York City, and he had some highs and lows, but now his show was in danger, and so he had to pull off a desperate stunt in order to break through and get the ratings necessary for Sweeps Week in order for the show to continue. So the idea is bring on this supposed girl who's, well, she's not supposed a girl, she is a girl, but is supposedly possessed by a demon. And there you go. And of course, everything goes wrong, and well, there you have it. Now, in the storytelling structure, the idea you get an introduction, which is very much of a documentary film type aspect, and then it goes into what you could consider the found footage of this lost episode of the show where everything went wrong. It was aired live at the time, is the premise of it, but only now in the form of this film do you get to see the show again. And also included was behind the scenes footage. Well, that's where it kind of breaks. The actual taping of the show, it's very much like one of those shows were and everything, and you go through it and you've got different guests. That makes it, you've got a guy who's similar to the Amazing Randy, who was a guy who would always he would debunk all these supposed psychic powers and stuff like that. There's also a guy there who's a mystic who's very similar to what was his name? Uri Geller, was it? I think I can't remember exactly, but he was one of these guys who would always claim psychic powers, and him and Amazing Randy went at each other, and Randy would appear on Carson quite a bit. And so you got a character like that here. And then you've got this whole narrative about this girl and everything. And then there's things about Delroy's past and whatnot, and different suggestions about him. And there's all kind of the sleazy workings of doing this, exploitation for the purpose of saving the show and all that. But when it comes to the behind the scenes bit, it's all done in black and white. So the idea that, oh, there must have been this film crew filming that. Well, that would have worked, but they don't really establish it in that. And you're hearing private conversations and stuff, and about how this is all a stunt and all this type of thing. And again, the sleazy producer and Jack are talking about it and all that. Turns out Jack is involved in a relationship with this woman who is the guardian of this girl, and she's written a book called Conversations with the Devil, which that in and of itself, you could think to add to the stunt would be to have this film crew documented the event for the purpose of a film unto itself. Because at the time in the 70s, there was quite a few devil movies. There was The Exorcist, of course, The Omen, and but things that were given the title based on a true story. And Exorcist was, even though it was a young boy instead of a girl, but nevertheless inspired by a true story. The Omen, which of course is based on the biblical prophecies about Antichrist and the book of Revelation and all that. So technically speaking, you could put that tagline there too. And then Amityville Horror, another one that came out about being based on a true story. And so that's, it was a common thing at the time. And so there's a lot of credibility to the narrative here that somebody would say, hey, let's do our own little, I don't know, devil thing, on Halloween night and all that. That's what it does. And it plays out, and it's interesting, it's fascinating, and the performances are well done. And it flows out as a show like that would have been. So they do very good at that. It's just some things like that where it's the behind the scenes stuff. And I think there could have been framing devices where you could literally see Jack saying, hey, don't follow me around, and go away, this is private or whatever. And then they just sort of back off, and they still pick up the dialogue and whatnot. So you hear what the details are you're not supposed to hear, and that kind of thing. And I think that would have maintained the illusion of this. This is a documentary film cobbled together from whatever footage was left out of this event. So, but that's really all there is as far as just the narrative of it. It's pretty good. The little girl, I guess teenage girl they bring in that's possessed, is very creepy. She's very good at this, and I take it from it that she's no longer herself. She hasn't been herself at all. There's this backstory for her that's really terrible, and but I think she's always the demon as the story unfolds. It's just a front that the demon puts up. The poor girl's lost and gone, for all intents and purposes. And oh crap, the things that happen. But eventually, and a certain amount of surrealism you can forgive or what have you, or accept here, but it goes really wild into it. It's not enough. It depends on your how you view it. Other people, I think, will be fine and really enjoy this horror movie. But it breaks from the reality structure, albeit somewhat. You can understand it from the viewpoint of Jack Delroy, but you're not going to see that on film, and they even make a point of this in the film itself. And so this sort of surreal Twilight Zone madness he goes through that ultimately ends the story. I don't know. I would think there should have been some other solution or resolution to it. Ultimately, it would explain what happens, what he does, but I don't know how you do that without breaking out of a lot of the reality-based structure that it had established, that this is a tape of an old show and this is what happened and stuff like that. The only other way to do it was that you see it and you see what he saw and experience what he experienced and all that. So how do you achieve that without portraying it? So yeah, I can understand that. So I mean, it does have the warning, do not watch this show because they'll come for you, that sort of thing. But all in all, I do appreciate it, and I have praise for the attempt. It's just just to be honest and objectively looking at it, there's things there I thought, I just wish there was a different solution or take to that plot point or this one and how it delivers. But ultimately, it's a fun ride. although very creepy, but it's a horror movie, so you got to expect that. And I have a personal appreciation for it, not just because of my interest in found footage technique and whatnot, but I did my own sort of take on a story very similar to this in one of my Halloween specials in 2016, and it had a cast. Bob Levy was one of the characters and all that, and that was Scream of the Devil. And in that one, it was a stunt by a radio show for a Halloween show to have a seance done on the show, and of course all hell breaks loose. But that's the only similarity there. It was sort of an attempt at a War of the Worlds type thing. But anyway, I appreciate the effort and I respect it, and it would be a recommend. I think this will be a horror film that gets looked at quite frequently, like for Halloween and stuff like that when you're in the mood. So do check it out. Late Night with the Devil.